Okay. Our second speaker this evening is Eric Browning. He will be sharing helpful information and tips on using written feedback forms to provide speakers with tremendous value. Please welcome Eric Browning for his speech, Powerful Written Feedback.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Just want to confirm 8 to 10 minutes.
Thank you, AJ. Yes, that's correct. Tonight's presentation by me is certainly a speech here at Toastmasters, but I do want to say that don't worry about giving me the written feedback. I know that's the topic of tonight's meeting, but I want you to pay attention. We're going to get into some kind of nitty-gritty stuff. Sean has just given us a wonderful body of knowledge that we'll be able to work into some of these written forms. And she's given you one method of dividing your paper into 4, and there's no reason you can't do multiple versions of these and find out what works best for you. That certainly sounds like it would work phenomenally well for having a reference as you give your verbal evaluation, but it could also be something that you roll into a more formal form, such as the Toastmasters pathway written feedback form and so on. Because I took a little bit of extra time for tonight's presentation, we can also skip that extra minute at the end if the Toastmaster is so inclined. At this point, I'm going to share a screen with everybody. Everyone online and in the room should be able to see this. This is Toastmasters' generic pathways evaluation resource. This is one that applies to any speech. Maybe it's a pathway speech, maybe it's one outside. In this, I want to go over a couple of the items that are on the speech that many of us, especially those of us who are maybe new, might overlook. The first page you'll notice has some obvious fields: name of the person speaking, your name as the evaluator, date, and then there's some details about the speech. It's very important to review, if you are the formal evaluator, what the purpose of their project is. It will help guide what you focus on in their speech. Besides that, the speaker may have given you, as their evaluator, specific things to look for when they're giving their speech. Those are things to take in before the speech even begins. You'll see some general comments you excelled at, you may want to work on, and things to challenge yourself. Those correspond exactly to what Shauna just described as 3 of the boxes on her page. One thing you might keep in mind is it's difficult to listen to the speech and take a lot of notes all at the same time. Quick ideas are helpful, but sometimes you might just want to jot down a quick word or 2 that captures the idea. That way you can come back to the form and not feel like you've had to scratch lines out to reword things several times. That's one technique that I've used before. One nice thing about the pathways feedback method is that you can take those notes, give your verbal evaluation, go home, and then type it out on the computer. I generally don't start on the first page. I go to the second page where there are these areas that help you focus on different aspects of the speech and its delivery. There's clarity, vocal variety, eye contact, gestures, audience awareness, comfort level, and interest, and then well-supported. It has more to do with speech organization. Well-supported may not show on every different evaluation resource, and some resources may have an additional few fields depending on the specific project. The meat and potatoes here is the evaluation criteria. This is a powerful thing to be familiar with. It tells you exactly what you're looking for and what the criteria is for the various levels that you may encounter. 5 is described as exemplary. And for example, with clarity, the speaker is exemplary public speaker who is always understood. And then it ranges down to spoken language is clear and easily understood. You might think that, wow, I was able to understand them. They're a 5. Maybe they're a 3. So there is some subjectivity here, and this is going to factor in when I go over our club's specific form as well. So it's good to take some time before the speech begins and get familiar with some of these specific categories. One that I think a lot of people have struggled with is audience awareness. What on earth does that mean for a speaker to be aware of their audience? You practice your speech alone in the mirror. So what's different when you're in a room? You can gauge their reactions. you can change your speech. As you notice people driving away, maybe you can check your vocal variety. Maybe you're starting to talk a little bit monotonously. You can engage it. Audience awareness also is maybe the most obvious one, is who are you speaking to? Is your topic appealing to them? Let's see what the Pathways talks about that. The audience, 5 would be the engages the audience completely and anticipates audience needs. I'll just go skip 1 and go to 3. Demonstrates awareness of audience engagements and needs. Or 1, unfortunately, makes little or no attempt to engage the audience or meet audience needs. But it's much more than that. And that means gauging live and also gauging in your preparation. Interest, it's not necessarily how interested the speaker seems in the topic. It's how interested you feel as an evaluator in what they're talking about. Do they fully engage the audience with exemplary, well-constructed content? Or is it, well, interesting, well-constructed? Or is the content interesting but not well-constructed? Or is it well-constructed but not interesting? One or the other or neither. We won't go through every single one of these. The main thing is to take the time when you are evaluating, particularly a pathway speech, and you have this resource in front of you, to become familiar with each of these. Why does this matter? I have seen many evaluations that I've received where I get 5s all the way down. And even though that may be flattering to me, I'm quite sure that I wouldn't still be attending meetings quite as frequently if I was really a 5 all the way down. Now, what have I done in the past? I've seen 5, 5, 5, 4, 5, 5, 5. Okay, I know, obviously the 4, there was a reason, so I'll focus on that one. But what I do with the feedback is a topic for Karen's speech coming up. Let's continue with the written feedback. You can come down through here with the printed version or online and circle the numbers that you feel apply in that specific area. If it's not 5, you probably want to make a quick comment in this section. If you're using the online version, you'll notice that you are character limited. You can't just write forever and the text gets smaller and smaller. You'll be capped. In the handwritten version, well, if you can write really small, you can fit a lot of things in there. Now I'm going to switch. So I'm switching over to our clubs because there's a lot of crossover. Some of you online who attend regularly there may not be familiar with this, but this is one our club has used for many, many years. Now, this is a later version. We've tweaked a little bit. A couple of years ago, we changed this from outstanding, very good, good, not so good, needs improvement to match those that are used in the pathways. Now, in this first section, there's a bunch of checkboxes, very much like the pathways. In yellow are the ones that are exactly the same as in pathways, but our club has put out a couple of other things. And I think some of these can confuse some of our members. What is meant by these different areas? Speech value is a very subjective thing. It means how valuable was the speech to you specifically, or how do you perceive it being valued to the audience at large? Some of this is a crossover with audience awareness. Preparation is typically self-evident. I may have some mixed feelings about this particular one because they could have spent 2 minutes preparing and it may come off very well prepared. So what is your impression of that? So on and so forth. One thing people might get hung up on is feeling like they need to put a checkbox in every single one of these boxes, and you don't need to do that. If something stands out to you, put a checkbox in it. And you'll notice that there are some that are in pathways form that are missing here. Those include clarity, interest, and being well supported. But you will find some of these, such as clarity, might be a part of delivery manner. And what you'll want to do after you've checked out some of these boxes, either during or after the speech, sometimes you don't know until the end of the speech whether the conclusion was good or not, or to your liking, or as perfect as you thought it might be. The next box matches perfectly with the pathways form, what I like best about your speech. Again, if you're not the formal evaluator, but somebody sitting here in the room offering feedback, you don't need to write a book. You can, but put at least one thing that really stood out to you. Just like Shauna said, state the obvious. What really grabbed your attention? Suggestions for where and how to improve? Again, try to find just one thing. It will stand out to you. And you may think, oh, it's not worth saying, it's too obvious. But if you have 15, 20 people in the room, they're all going to notice different things. Don't feel you're selling the speaker short by only listing one thing. Many people might catch the other things. It also can be a bit overwhelming to read. And to challenge yourself, purely optional, but if you see something that they could really have done that's not necessarily bad, but could take their speech to the next level, go ahead and write it there. The last line you'll notice is by. Some people get really nervous about putting their name on an evaluation source. They're like, oh gosh, I'm not even sure about what I said. And that's fine. Putting your name on the evaluation is optional. But with time, I think you'll find that it's really helpful to put it on there. They might have some questions about something you said, and they'll know who to come back and talk to. It also shows that you're confident in the feedback that you're giving. After all, it's what makes Toastmasters work. So this has been a good overview of our written feedback forms. I hope that all of you have learned something about it and have a better idea of what's available to you as a written resource. Look forward to the next time to review this kind of stuff. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.